Hey folks, Lemonade here, and today we are talking about some new pro level mouse pads as Artisan have some serious competition again, while the PureTrak Mustang P-51 and the Hystar Mirai over here are knocking on the door. So let's see what they have right after this. Small disclaimer per usual, PureTrak and Hystar sent me these pads for free for a review, but that will never change the outcome of any review on the channel. My opinions are my own, and you are seeing this as early as they are. Okay, I'm going to knock out the specs real quick, and I'll put those up here per usual for you folks. We have had a lot of new mousepad releases this past year, and it seems like every company is just inching its way into the pro level mousepad space. They want a piece of that pie, and by pro level, I mean the Artisan level. And as we all know, Artisan really is the premier mousepad company, full stop. They really are the ones who perfected the cloth mousepad formula. But it really was only a matter of time before other companies started knocking on their door, starting really with the Lethal Gaming Gear Venus and Saturn Pro lineup. And now we have these two challengers. Okay, so let's start off with the PureTrak P-51 over here. Now this does come nicely flat packed in a really good looking sleeve with the famous World War II US fighter plane printed right on the front. It seems that the theme here is the comparison to the plane itself, that it was revolutionary and perfectly crafted for its time, as they stated in their teaser video. So is it perfectly crafted? Well, yes and no. Let's start with the base solution itself. PureTrak opted in to use alpha cell for their base versus a Poron or natural rubber base like we found on their old pads. And while we have seen alpha cell in Pulsar's new mousepads, this is a different version that has been fine-tuned. Fine-tuned by the boys, Carlos and Gus from Hardware Unplugged. This is their brainchild that they took from A to Z, and they were involved in every step of the mousepad's creation. Kudos on launching this mousepad, boys. Now, their reasoning to use alpha cell is that they felt it was a better material to Poron in its feel and how much better it sticks to surfaces, but earlier versions of alpha cell like Pulsars over here had some humidity concerns and a bubbling effect when applying to surfaces, and they did fix that, kind of. In my testing with Pulsar's pad, it was more humidity affected, which is a big turnoff for me, and also the bubbling was a little bit more noticeable if I rushed to apply it onto a surface. The little divots over here you can see on the alpha cell base on PureTrak's does help reduce that occurrence versus the kind of glass-like finish on the Pulsar pad. That said, there still are some problems here with this alpha cell base. First off, in regards to the bubbling, it still can happen, so I would advise taking your time to properly clean your desk and laying it down in a slow, even motion from one direction all the way to the other to get an even fit. Secondly, and I'll throw up some photos and videos here so you can see, the alpha cell on my copy here is a bit wavy, and so I'm not sure if that's a QC thing or not, but I was 100% feeling it on the surface as I tested different mice on it, going in a vertical motion, and it felt like little ridges I was gliding over. Something that really wasn't apparent on Pulsar's pad or Lethal Gaming Gear or Artisan's Poron pads. And speaking on those pads, as you can see in these clips, alpha cell in general just rebounds back a little slower than Poron. It's almost like a slow memory foam, and because of that, if you are heavier handed, it's just something to consider, as at times it felt a bit less consistent while using it, or maybe it was just the sensation of the slower rebound effect. It's not something that's immediately apparent when you're just kind of gliding around on it, but in more kind of tense clutch moments where you're kind of digging in, it does feel like that sensation is coming through a bit. Now we move on to the surface itself. They state that this is in the CL1 series with a 10% speed increase. Now the CL1 is one of my favorite pads by PureTrak. It really has a great level of speed and control, and it's just a really comfortable surface to glide on. Now the 10% speed bump over here is not something I really noticed, and I feel that the alpha cell material kind of took that away overall. at times maybe making it feel a touch slower. You know, it's not a night and day difference. And that being said, I have the CL1 here in their temple design, so that may factor in that difference, or maybe because the CL1 uses a firmer 6mm base. But again, we ran into an issue, and really only after about 2 weeks of use, the surface is already kind of getting stained in various spots here, and then I have some photos, but I'll show on the screen, but you can kind of make it out on the camera here as well. Now, I wasn't eating anything at my desk or drinking anything, and relatively pretty clean guy. Now, if anything, my hands are maybe a little bit sweatier just because the room that I work in is warmer, but honestly, that hasn't had an effect like this on any other pad in my collection, even one like the Xten Control, which I put much more time into personally. Now, I haven't tried to wash this off. It may come off, but that's not really something I think anyone should expect to do after about 2 weeks. Now, this may be more noticeable on the orange pad here versus the kind of darker blue and black, but that's obviously something I don't have to test. And lastly, the stitching, really just nothing bad at all here compared to their older pads. This is a big step up. It really comes in line with the likes of Artisan or Lethal Gaming Gear stitching with that kind of below the surface level feel. This is some great stuff. Now, in terms of performance and feel, it really kind of toes the line of being balanced, but leaning a little bit towards control. I mean, the classic CL1 is a very Vaxi PA or GSR SE Rouge territory in its speed with that silky smooth texture, but maybe just a little faster than those pads. Now, this is just a touch slower than my Xten Control pad, especially you kind of feel that in the static friction or those smaller inner hand movements. All right, though, let's talk price here, and is this pad worth it? Well, it's tough for me. At $40, it's a great size, phenomenal stitching, it's a nicely balanced surface, comfortable, comes in 3 different colors, and the higher end alpha cell base, and it's flat packed. Yeah, it's a great value. But with the issues that I've experienced in the alpha cell, not only from pulsars, but now here, and then the surface staining with, I'm assuming, sweat or something, I don't know, it's just kind of hard for me to recommend this one. I didn't have a bad time playing on it at all, don't get me wrong. I really had a fun time with this, and again, the CL1 pad was one of my favorites, so I was particularly excited about this release. And when I compare it to the other PureTrak pads in their lineup, it really is stand out. All right, on to the Hystar Mirai. So Hystar started to get into the pro space last year with their Pro series pads, but it seems like the reception for those was pretty lackluster, I'm being just honest. Now, though, they've released their Elite series, and the Mirai is the first of its kind. And the name is kind of fitting because Mirai means future in Japanese. This is a limited edition product with 300 units total. As you can see here, all of the units are tagged in the bottom left corner, which honestly is a great spot. It doesn't get in the way. And on the back, it shows here what number you have. Now, Hystar's founder, Josh, told me his goal was to make a Poron-based mousepad with incredible stitching and find a way to get designs printed on to the surface, something that really was a challenge on Poron mousepads. That's why we really haven't seen it from other companies. And after 2 years of testing, they did it. Okay, let's start with the packaging. Now, this also comes flat packed, but it's a more of a box solution than a sleeve with a very sturdy cardboard all around as the base. Now, normally that's all good enough for me, but Josh and his team put a lot of care into some details on the box, but also the mousepad's design. And I asked him to describe what was going on with all of this. Now, looking at the back of the box, at the top over here, you have a quote from Yuri Gagarin, the astronaut, and the inside flaps, as you can see, has the mention of the horizon, all kind of symbolizing a new era and uncertainties as they explore this market of higher-end pads. And then on this side, we have this kind of crazy long tablet-looking thing with some graphs down here. Well, so the number 4121 means that the average rating that pro players gave this project's concept, and the Greek word above it means perfection, while the 1323 is the average rating pros give the QCK mousepad, and the Greek word here means garbage. And the big iceberg above those is kind of symbolizing that two products can kind of mirror and look the same, but there are some hidden details that separate them. And with the packaging out of the way, we're running into the Mousepads design here and some of the little hidden Easter eggs. First off, March 1st, 2021 is the founding of Hystar. The 90% loading bar right over here is just a reminder for them to never settle in their products. The kanjis here, I believe it was a futuristic, and then we have the future is now. This one, I believe, stated successful operation, and this over here stated cyberpunk. And apparently there are a few other kind of company hidden messages within the rest of this. Overall, I really do love that they spent so much time on these small details that really no one would notice, because it just shows their passion for this. And honestly, I really like the theme here. It has this kind of Japanese futuristic cyberpunk theme, but maybe I feel that some of the Easter eggs across the packaging and the design of the pad were maybe a little bit too much, with the whole Yuri Gagarin thing and some of the kanji here and the kind of golden standard writing here in this kind of font that really just doesn't match. Anyway, listen, I love the passion here. Nonetheless, they didn't play it safe at all, and that's a good thing. Okay, so onto the pad. Sorry about that, but normally we don't get design intricacies like that with Mousepads, so I wanted to at least cover a little bit for you folks. Now, they state on the packaging and all over the site that this is authentic Poron. And is it? Yes, it is. Now, I did want to say that they label it as X-Soft, but honestly, it's a bit firmer than the X-Soft used in Artisan or Lethal Gaming Gear's Pro Pads. It's also a touch less stickier too. Now, I did reach out and ask Josh, because when I was using this, it did feel not quite the same as those pads, and it kind of started to stick out when I was comparing them back and forth. But he did let me know the differences, that this is a different formulation of Poron, because apparently, and I didn't know, that there are many options to choose from when you are working with Rogers Corporation, the creators of Poron. Now, he even went as far as providing me product sheets for the Poron that they went with, which was number 470-30. It's still considered soft, but better compression resistance, which does translate to less stickiness, but more consistent performance. He assumes that Artisan and Lethal Gaming Gear probably went with the 4790-92 variant of Poron, and he even tested it with a few other variations. And on their tracking data, they determined that this one here, 4701-30, tracked a little bit better, about 7% better in terms of path deviation, as you see in all these images. Now, was that the case in game? Honestly, they all felt great. I think it's really just going to boil down to a personal preference in terms of the firmness, and I think a lot more people are leaning towards firmer pads these days. I just have to say, I normally don't get so much transparency from brands, so it was really nice to see Josh willing to share his and his team's hard research as to why they chose a certain base over others. Okay, so now on to the surface here. Now, this is a hybrid style surface, and if I had to compare it, it feels like something like the Locust Mirai, the Hateatsu, or the Lethal Gaming Gear Venus. It's in the same category in terms of its kind of rougher texture. I feel that the Locust Mirai really is the closest in feel, and these macro shots here that you're seeing does lead me to that conclusion. Plus, they are both printed pads with designs, so that does make sense in terms of compatibility. Overall, though, I'd say it's pretty balanced when you combine it with the Poron base, but it still does lead to the speed side of the spectrum. It's really a fun pad to use, and I think a combination most people are going to feel really at home with some dynamic and static friction, but it's a pretty freeing pad. Now, the stitching is also a big area for them, in that they state that they created their own stitching method from the ground up and went all the way to the outer edges, and it's below the surface, and it was really kind of a custom solution for them. But for people who are really picky about stitching, I do have to say it's not necessarily below the surface. The stitching line here is a little bit above. I mean, you kind of feel it with your nail if you kind of run it across the edge, or maybe push your mouse over the edge. And if I really cared to maybe crown a winner in terms of stitching, Artisan still has every company beat. I think their stitching is still king. That all said, I mean, this is still some of the best that I've seen in my office out of the many pads that I get. So don't get it mixed up. This really should never bother you in your day-to-day use. All right, but let's talk if this thing is worth it. So they're selling this for $50 on their website with free shipping. I'm not sure what countries are eligible for that, but since I'm in the US, let's look at the US market. And when I do, I think it's incredibly fair, honestly. Lethal Gaming Gear's Pro Series pads are about $60 with the shipping. Artisan's pads are about $62 or so shipped. Plus, again, this is a low quantity item of only 300, so naturally costs are going to be a little bit higher for them. Now, when you look at the quality custom packaging that they're providing, the authentic Poron base, a hybrid surface that it can actually support some unique designs, incredible stitching, and attention to details overall. You know, if this is what they released for their first pad in the Elite series, honestly, the signs are really good for Hystar. And on that note, folks, all my socials are down below, along with any affiliate links for the brands that I trust. You can use code LEMONADE to possibly save a few bucks. If you had a good time with me today, likes and subs are always appreciated. Please leave a comment down below. Let me know what your thoughts are on these two pads. But until the next Fresh Squeeze video, stay thirsty, folks.